I'd always thought my life with Clara was a quiet masterpiece. Simple brushstrokes of routine layered over years of trust. 20 years married. A house with a sagging porch, 2 grown kids off at college, and a rhythm to our days that felt like a worn-in pair of boots. I'm Daniel, a high school history teacher, the kind who lingers over dusty textbooks and faded maps. While Clara worked part-time at the library, her auburn hair always slipping from its bun as she shelved novels with a dreamy smile. We weren't perfect, but we were ours. Or so I thought. It started with a ripple, the kind you don't notice until the water's already churning. Late August, the air thick with cicada hums, Clara began staying late at the library. Inventory, she'd say, her voice light, her hazel eyes darting to the floor. I didn't question it. Why would I? She'd come home smelling of old paper and lavender, her usual scent, and I'd greet her with a kiss on the forehead, the same ritual we'd danced through for decades. But then the phone calls started. She'd step outside to take them, her whispers floating through the screen door like ghosts I couldn't catch. Just a friend. She'd laugh when I asked, brushing it off with a wave of her hand. I'm not a suspicious man by nature. History taught me patterns repeat, but I never thought to look for them in my own home. Then came the night I found the receipt, crumpled in her coat pocket while I was hanging it up after a rainstorm. Dinner for 2 at La Bella Vita, a swanky Italian place we'd never been to together. $58, paid in cash, dated a Tuesday when she'd claimed a late shift. My stomach twisted, but I told myself it was nothing. A coworker, a treat, a mistake. I folded it back into her pocket and said nothing, the weight of it pressing against my ribs. The next week, I saw her laugh, a bright, unguarded sound I hadn't heard in years, while texting someone in the kitchen. She didn't notice me standing in the doorway, my coffee cooling in my hands. Her thumbs flew over the screen, and that smile, God, it wasn't mine anymore. I asked who it was, casual as I could manage. Oh, just Linda from work, she said, tucking the phone away too fast. Linda. The name sat like a stone in my throat. I didn't push, but I started watching. The late nights multiplied, the excuses grew flimsier, and I felt the edges of our life fraying like an old map left too long in the sun. I couldn't sleep after that laugh. It haunted me, replaying in the dark as I lay beside her, her breathing soft and steady while my mind churned. I'd always trusted Clara implicitly, her quiet strength, her way of making even the mundane feel sacred. But now every memory felt suspect. Had she always been this distant, or was I just noticing? I started piecing things together, a historian sifting through fragments. The late nights, the phone calls, that receipt, they weren't random. They were clues. I decided to test the waters. One evening, I told her I'd be at a staff meeting until 9. A lie I delivered with a practiced calm. Instead, I parked 2 streets over from the library, my old pickup blending into the dusk. I waited, the dashboard clock ticking like a heartbeat. At 6:47, she emerged, not alone. A man walked beside her, tall, broad-shouldered, with a swagger I'd never had. He wore a leather jacket, his hair slicked back, and when he leaned down to whisper something, she laughed again. That laugh. My laugh stolen. They didn't head to her car. Instead, they crossed the lot to a black sedan, his I assumed, and drove off. I followed, hands trembling on the wheel, keeping my distance like some amateur detective. The sedan wound through town, past the diner we used to love, past the park where we'd picnicked with the kids, and stopped at a motel on Route 12. The neon sign flickered vacancy, and I watched them disappear into room 14, her arm tucked into his like it belonged there. I sat in my truck, engine idling, the world tilting beneath me. I didn't confront her that night. I drove home, poured a whiskey, and sat in the dark, replaying every moment of our life together. Who was he? How long had this been happening? The questions gnawed at me, but worse was the realization that I'd been blind, willfully, stupidly blind. Clara came home at 10:03, humming softly, claiming exhaustion from sorting donations. I nodded, my voice steady, and kissed her forehead like always. But the next morning I called in sick. I couldn't face the classroom, the eager faces of my students, when my own world was crumbling. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the coffee mug she'd used, lipstick faintly smudged on the rim, and planned. I needed proof, something undeniable. Suspicion wasn't enough. I had to know. I drove to the library during her shift, pretending to browse while watching her from behind a row of biographies. She moved with her usual grace, but there was a lightness to her step, a secret energy. Then he arrived, leather jacket, strolling in like he owned the place. He leaned over the counter, whispering, and she blushed, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. It was intimate, effortless, and it gutted me. I snapped a photo with my phone, shaky but clear. Him, her, the moment. Evidence. I left before she saw me, my pulse hammering. Back home, I uploaded the image to my laptop and stared at it, zooming in on his face. I didn't know him, but I would. I opened her phone bill online. Thank God we shared an account, and found a number she'd texted dozens of times in the past month. Not Linda's. I cross-referenced it on a search engine, digging through social media until I hit gold. Marcus Tate, 42, mechanic, divorced. His profile was public, littered with photos of him at bars, on motorcycles, grinning like a man who took what he wanted. I printed the picture and tucked it into my desk drawer, a talisman of betrayal. That night, Clara came home late again, her cheeks flushed. Long day, she sighed, kicking off her shoes. I asked about her co-workers, probing gently. Oh, same old crew, she said, avoiding my eyes. I smiled, tight-lipped, and offered to make tea. She didn't notice the tremor in my hands. Marcus Tate. The name burned into me, a brand I couldn't shake. I spent hours online, piecing together his life. His garage on Elm Street, his late-night haunts, his cocky posts about living free. I drove by his shop the next day. A squat building with grease-stained walls and a sign reading Tate's Auto. His sedan was parked out front, gleaming in the sun. I imagined her in that car, her laughter filling it, and my knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. I started following her more, mapping her lies. Tuesday, she claimed a book club meeting, another motel visit. Thursday, a staff dinner. A dive bar where I saw them through the window, her hand on his arm, his fingers brushing her knee. Each sighting was a shard of glass in my chest. But I didn't shatter. I collected them, building something sharp and cold inside me. Clara didn't suspect a thing. She'd hum while cooking, kiss me goodnight, her lips warm and traitorous. I played along, asking about her day, nodding at her stories. But I was changing. History taught me revenge wasn't rash, it was calculated, deliberate. I began to plan, sketching ideas in a notebook I hid beneath the floorboards. Not violence, not yet. Something worse. Something she'd feel for years. I needed more than photos and instinct. I needed her confession, her vulnerability laid bare. I bought a voice recorder, small enough to hide in her purse, and waited for the right moment. Friday, she announced another late shift. I slipped the device into the lining while she showered, my heart thudding with a mix of dread and purpose. She left, oblivious, her lavender scent trailing behind her. That night, I waited, the house silent except for the clock's relentless tick. She returned at 11:19, her hair mussed, her smile too bright. Tough night, she murmured, collapsing onto the couch. I retrieved the recorder after she slept, listening in the dark. Her voice, soft and giddy, spilled secrets. Marcus, you're trouble. I can't stop thinking about you. His low chuckle, her breathless laugh, intimate murmurs I couldn't unhear. It was real, undeniable, and it fueled me. I didn't sleep. I sat in my study, the recording on loop, letting it carve away the last of my doubt. Revenge took shape, a cruel, elegant thing. I'd strip her of everything, her comfort, her lies, her dignity. But first, I'd let her dig deeper, unaware of the trap closing around her. The recorder became my silent ally, a witness to Clara's unraveling lies. I didn't confront her, not yet. I wanted her to feel safe, to sink further into her deception while I sharpened my edges. The next morning, I watched her sip coffee, her lips curling into that secret smile she wore too often now. "Good night," I asked, my voice steady as stone. "Oh, exhausting," she replied, brushing crumbs from her blouse. I nodded, picturing Marcus's hands where mine used to belong, and let the silence stretch between us. I upgraded my tools. A tiny GPS tracker, ordered online, arrived in a plain brown box. I attached it to the undercarriage of her car that afternoon while she napped, the sun beating down on my neck. By evening, my phone pinged with her movements, library, then straight to Marcus's garage. I didn't follow this time. I sat at home, tracking her on the map, imagining her laughter echoing off oil-stained walls. When she returned, I asked about her day, casual as ever. "Just work," she said, yawning. I smiled, a predator biding his time. History taught me patience. Empires fell not in a day but through slow, deliberate erosion. I began gathering more photos from discrete distances, snippets of recorded conversations, timestamps from the tracker. A dossier grew in my desk drawer, each piece a brick in the wall I'd build around her. But evidence wasn't enough. I wanted her soul laid bare, her shame exposed. I started leaving hints, subtle, deniable. A pen from La Bella Vita on the counter, a motel keycard on her nightstand. She'd glance at them, frown, then shrug it off. I watched her squirm, savoring the flicker of doubt in her eyes. Clara didn't notice the shift in me. She still kissed my cheek, still hummed her tunes, but I was no longer the man she'd married. I was a historian of her betrayal, cataloging every misstep. Late at night, I'd sit with my notebook, sketching the revenge taking form. It wouldn't be loud or messy. It would be a quiet devastation, a mirror held to her life until she couldn't look away. I'd wait until the perfect moment, when her world felt secure, then pull the thread that unraveled it all. A week later, I met Marcus face to face. Not by choice, but by fate's cruel design. I'd stopped at the hardware store for paint, a mundane errand. When he swaggered in, leather jacket creaking, his voice loud as he joked with the clerk. I froze, clutching a can of primer, my pulse a drumbeat in my ears. He didn't know me, didn't see the husband of the woman he'd claimed, but I saw him. Every line of his smug face, every careless gesture. I paid and left, my hands shaking. The image of him burned into me. That night, Clara came home late again, her blouse wrinkled, her excuses thin. "Linda needed help with something," she said, avoiding my gaze. I nodded, pouring her a glass of wine, my fingers steady now. "You're a good friend," I murmured, and she smiled, oblivious to the venom beneath my words. I listened to the recorder later, her voice tangled with his, soft murmurs about next time and Daniel's clueless. Clueless. The word ignited something dark in me, a fire I'd stoke until it consumed her. I began planting seeds beyond the house. At the library, I chatted with her coworkers, dropping casual questions about Marcus. "Oh, he's been around a lot lately," one said, oblivious to my intent. "Helping with repairs, I think." I thanked her, filing it away. I called our kids, Emma in Boston, Jake in Chicago, asking about their mother's recent calls. "She's been distracted," Emma admitted. "Said she's busy with work." I let them talk, their voices a lifeline to the life we'd built, now fracturing under Clara's choices. The plan crystallized. I'd expose her. Not to me, not yet, but to everyone else. Her coworkers, our kids, her precious small-town reputation. I'd weave a web so tight she'd choke on her own lies. But first, I'd let her dance a little longer with Marcus, let her think she'd won. The recorder hummed in my hands, a promise of her downfall. October arrived, the leaves bleeding red and gold, a fitting backdrop to my growing resolve. Clara's routine solidified. Library, Marcus, lies, and I shadowed it, a ghost in her periphery. The GPS tracker mapped her world. Motel trysts, late-night drives, a diner on the edge of town where they lingered over coffee like a mockery of our old dates. I photographed it all, my lens a cold eye capturing her descent. I started altering our home, subtle shifts she wouldn't notice at first. Her favorite mug vanished, replaced by a chipped one from the back of the cupboard. The lavender soap she loved ran out, and I stocked unscented bars instead. She'd frown, puzzled, but say nothing. I wanted her to feel the ground shifting, to sense something amiss without knowing why. At night, I'd leave the bedroom door ajar, letting the house creak and settle around her guilt-ridden sleep. One evening, I accidentally left a photo on the kitchen table. A blurry shot of her and Marcus outside the motel, printed from my growing collection. She found it while I washed dishes, her gasp sharp enough to cut through the running water. "What's this?" she asked, voice trembling. I turned, feigning surprise. "No idea. Found it in a book from the library." "Weird. Huh." Her face paled, and she stammered something about a mistake, crumpling the photo into the trash. I smiled inwardly, the first crack in her facade. I escalated. I mailed an anonymous note to the library director. Typed, untraceable, mentioning unprofessional conduct by a staff member with a frequent visitor. No names, just enough to stir whispers. Clara came home rattled the next day, muttering about rumors at work. "Someone's stirring trouble," she said, her eyes darting to mine. I shrugged, offering tea, my calm a blade she couldn't see. She sipped it, unaware I'd already begun dismantling her world. The whispers spread, a slow poison seeping through her life. Clara grew jumpy, her laughter fading, replaced by tight-lipped smiles. She'd check her phone obsessively, texting Marcus in hurried bursts. Unaware I'd cloned her messages to an app on my laptop. "They're asking questions at work," she wrote him. "Be careful." His reply, "Relax, babe. No one knows." I smirked, saving it all. Every word a nail for her coffin. I called Emma and Jake again, planting seeds of concern. "Your mom's been off lately?" I said, voice heavy with feigned worry. "Maybe check in with her?" They did, and Clara's flustered responses filtered back to me. Half-truths about stress and long hours. I let our neighbors overhear me on the porch, musing aloud about strange cars near the library. Small towns thrive on gossip, and I fed it, a gardener tending a twisted vine. Marcus felt it too. I saw him at the garage, arguing with a coworker, his swagger dimmed. I'd mailed another note, this one to his boss, hinting at personal distractions affecting work. Petty, perhaps, but effective. Clara came home that night, eyes red, claiming a headache. I offered aspirin, my tone gentle, my heart cold. She didn't know I'd already drafted an email to our kids, ready to attach photos and recordings, poised to hit send when the moment ripened. I tested her again, leaving the recorder playing faintly in my study, her voice with Marcus, a loop of betrayal. She walked by, froze, then hurried upstairs, pretending not to hear. I turned it off, satisfied. She was unraveling, and I was the architect of her collapse. Soon, I'd strip away the last of her illusions, leaving her naked in the wreckage of her choices. By mid-October, Clara's world teetered. The library cut her hours, rumors had consequences, and Marcus's texts grew sparse, his tone curt. I watched her pace the kitchen, chewing her lip, a caged bird sensing the bars. I kept my routine, grading papers, cooking dinner, but my eyes tracked her every move. She'd lost weight, her auburn hair dull, her lies thinner. "Everything okay?" I'd ask, and she'd nod too quickly, a puppet on fraying strings. I mailed the email to Emma and Jake, a curated archive. Photos, recordings, timestamps. "I didn't want to believe it," I wrote. "But your mother's been living a different life." I hit send, my chest tight with a strange triumph. Their calls came within hours. Emma tearful, Jake furious, demanding answers Clara couldn't give. She stumbled through excuses, her voice cracking, while I listened from the hallway, unseen. The next day, I left a final gift. A printed screenshot of her texts with Marcus, taped to the bathroom mirror. She found it at dawn, her scream echoing through the house. I walked in, calm as ever. "What's wrong?" I asked, and she stared at me, wild-eyed, the truth dawning too late. My revenge was ready, a storm about to break. Clara's scream lingered in the air, a raw, jagged sound that marked the end of her illusions. She stood before the bathroom mirror, the screenshot trembling in her hands. Her own words to Marcus, a love note laced with betrayal, now a noose around her neck. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, my face a mask of quiet curiosity. "Daniel," she whispered, her voice breaking, "where did you get this?" I tilted my head, letting the silence answer for me. Her hazel eyes, once warm, now darted like a trapped animal's, searching for an escape that didn't exist. I stepped closer, my shadow falling over her. "You've been busy," I said, my tone soft but edged with ice. "Marcus, the motel, the lies. Did you think I wouldn't notice?" She stammered, her excuses collapsing mid-sentence. "Linda, work, exhaustion. All dust in the wind." I pulled out my phone, scrolled to a photo of them outside the diner, and held it up. Her gasp was a small, pitiful thing. "How long?" I asked, though I knew the answer. "Months. Maybe more." She sank to the floor, clutching the sink, her sobs filling the room. I didn't comfort her. I watched, a historian documenting the fall of an empire. "The kids know," I added, dropping the bomb with surgical precision. Emma cried. "Jake's furious. They've heard you with him. Every whisper, every laugh." Her head snapped up, horror etching her face. "You didn't," she breathed. I nodded, slow and deliberate. "I did. They deserved the truth." She lunged for me, hands clawing at my shirt, begging me to call them, to take it back. I stepped away, her pleas bouncing off the walls, unheard. The morning unfolded in chaos. She locked herself in the bedroom, her phone buzzing with calls from Emma and Jake she couldn't face. I brewed coffee, the routine a stark contrast to her unraveling. My revenge wasn't done, it was a symphony, and this was merely the crescendo. I'd spent weeks crafting the finale, a punishment so cruel it would linger in her bones. She thought this was the worst of it. She was wrong. Clara emerged hours later, her face swollen from crying, her voice hoarse. "Why?" she asked, standing in the kitchen doorway, a ghost of the woman I'd loved. I set my mug down, meeting her gaze. "Because you chose him," I said simply. "You chose late nights and cheap motels over 20 years of us." She shook her head, denying it, but the evidence was a mountain she couldn't climb. I pulled out the dossier, photos, recordings, GPS logs, and spread it across the table like a war map. She stared, mute, as her life spilled out in black and white. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "You're not the victim here," I continued, flipping through pages. "I trusted you, Clara. I built my world around you, and you handed it to Marcus Tate." Her lips quivered, but no defense came. She knew I'd won this battle long before she'd realized we were fighting. "What now?" she whispered. I smiled, a thin, cold thing. "Now you live with it." That afternoon I packed a bag. Not mine, hers. I tossed it onto the porch, her clothes and books tumbling out, a public declaration of her exile. Neighbors peeked from windows as she scrambled to gather them. Her humiliation a spectacle I'd orchestrated. I called the library, feigning concern, suggesting they check security footage for odd visitors. By evening, her job was gone, the director citing conduct issues. She sat on the couch, staring at nothing, while I sipped whiskey in my study, the house hers no longer. The kids arrived the next day, Emma with tear-streaked cheeks, Jake with clenched fists. They didn't look at her, didn't speak. I'd told them to come for me, not her, and they obeyed. Clara begged them to listen, her voice a broken record, but they turned away, their silence a blade sharper than words. I watched her shrink, her world collapsing brick by brick, and felt the first stirrings of satisfaction. Marcus was next. I'd saved him for this moment, a secondary target in my campaign. I drove to his garage, the dossier in hand, and walked in as he wiped grease from his fingers. "You Daniel?" he asked, squinting, his bravado faltering when he saw my expression. I didn't answer. I dropped the photos on his workbench, him and Clara, motel nights, diner dates, watching his face shift from confusion to dread. "She's done with you." I lied, my voice flat. "But I'm not." I'd already mailed copies to his ex-wife, a bitter woman I'd found online, hinting at patterns she'd recognize. I'd tipped off his boss again, this time with timestamps of his absences, synced to Clara's tracker data. "You'll lose everything," I said, stepping closer. "Your job, your reputation, your little games." He swung at me, a wild, desperate punch I dodged easily. I didn't hit back. I didn't need to. His ruin was already in motion. Back home, Clara was a shadow, moving through the house like a trespasser. I changed the locks, leaving her key useless, forcing her to knock when she returned from wherever she'd fled. "Let me in," she pleaded through the door. I opened it, but only to hand her divorce papers, drafted weeks ago. "Sign them," I said, "or I send everything to your parents, your church, every friend you've ever had." Her hand shook as she took the pen, tears splashing onto the page. The town buzzed with whispers. Affair, library scandal, broken family. Clara couldn't walk downtown without stares, couldn't answer her phone without silence on the other end. I'd turned her life into a cage of her own making, each bar forged from her choices. She signed the papers that night, her signature a surrender, and I felt the weight of victory settle over me. Clara moved out the next day, a suitcase in hand, her eyes hollow. She'd rented a room above the diner, a downgrade from our sagging porch, and I watched her go, the final piece of her old life slipping away. I kept the house, the kids, the memories she'd tainted, and turned them into my fortress. She tried calling. Apologies, please, excuses, but I let them go to voicemail, her voice a fading echo I no longer needed. Marcus's garage closed a week later, his boss fed up with the drama. His ex-wife dragged him to court, armed with my anonymous tips, and his swagger crumbled under legal fees and scorn. I saw him once, pumping gas, his leather jacket scuffed, his eyes avoiding mine. I didn't gloat. I didn't have to. His ruin was a footnote to Clara's, a ripple in the wake of my storm. The kids stayed with me through Thanksgiving, their anger at her softening into pity, but they didn't reach out. I cooked turkey, told stories of their childhood, and erased her from the narrative. Emma asked once, "Will you forgive her?" I shook my head. "Some things don't heal," I said, and she didn't ask again. Clara's absence was a wound they'd carry, but I'd made sure it scarred her deeper. I sold her car, donated her books, scrubbed her lavender scent from the house. Every trace of her became a ghost I banished, my revenge a cleansing fire. Friends stopped asking about her. The town moved on, and I stood alone, unbroken. She'd chosen Marcus, but I'd chosen myself, and that was the cruelest cut of all. She'd lost everything, while I rebuilt on her ashes. Months passed, the seasons turning, and Clara faded into a rumor. I heard she worked nights at the diner now, her auburn hair tied back, her smile gone. Customers tipped her out of pity, not kindness, and she lived in that cramped room, a prisoner of her own story. I thrived, teaching, gardening, laughing with the kids. My life a testament to her defeat. One spring day, she knocked on my door, thinner, older, a letter in hand. "I'm sorry," she said, offering it like a truce. I took it, read her regret, then tore it in half. "Too late," I said, closing the door. She stood there, rain soaking her, until she walked away, a figure dissolving into the past. My revenge was complete, not in rage but in permanence. I'd stripped her of love, trust, dignity, leaving her to carry the weight of her betrayal forever. History would remember me as the victor, and her as the lesson, a cruel, perfect end.